Oh, God. Hey everybody, welcome back to another Tabletop Blender. I'm Nick, here with
Andrew.
And we're talking railroading in tabletop RPGs.
This is gonna be a fun one. We knew this episode was coming, so I actually posted on a couple social media spots what people thought about railroading, if people actually were okay with it, how many people were like against it, and I got a lot of responses that I knew I was gonna get. I also got a lot of responses that were I was kind of I shouldn't say I was too surprised.
No, I wasn't surprised seeing the amount of just utter hate
for railroads,
the disdain for railroading. What do you think about railroading in RPGs? If you're not familiar with what railroading is, if you're new to like the RPG stuff, it's really what we're talking about is planning an adventure that has little to no choice or at least the choices that the players make have little to no consequence on the story.
So the harder your rails are, the less that the PCs can influence the story. But honestly, it's as simple as saying, okay, this is where our adventure starts. Here are 3 events that are going to happen during the adventure, and then here's the finale. And I know what those are going to be as a GM. Players don't yet. And then you kind of can fill in the blanks. That is still a railroad. Some people say, no, that's just good adventure design, that's crafting. And I'm like, well, no, it's kind of predetermined that you are going to go...
Yeah, you're going to be here at that point. We'll get into how, at least I'm sure you have a different take on how to curb railroading. I do now because I've done I've done my share of railroading in the past inadvertently. But what do you really think of railroading? Do you think it's a good thing? Do you think it's a bad thing?
I think it's a good thing. And the older I get, the more I railroad. And it's kind of weird, but I actually have a DMing style that I do now, mostly with Savage Worlds, where it's almost like every session is like a one-shot.
Yeah.
I've had people call it episodic, like they feel like they're in a TV show, and it's not a bad thing. Yeah. But I will take a lot of that fumbling around that the players have and take that away. Mm-hmm. So like, for an example, the players were a group of supernatural hunters, demon hunters. And I literally said, okay, well, you guys are getting called to go investigate this mall that has been shut down. Boom, and you go there. There's no, there isn't another other choice. And the players expected that though, because that's how the game was set up, was like almost every single session was a one-shot. Now basically the way that worked is I put a problem in front of them, I put them to the problem, but I let them come up with their own answer.
Yeah. So
they still had choices, it's just that their first agency was gone.
Yeah.
Whether or not they're doing this mission, I guess.
We'll talk about a little bit, after we talk about the topics of railroading, I want to get into how to, just a little bit of how to be a player in a railroad situation. Yeah. Because I have some advice on this.
And I've seen some really bad people
but I was a part of that game, and as a player, you should understand. We'll get into this later a little bit more in depth, but yeah, you should understand your DM or GM's intentions, and that can really help make railroading a better experience for your party. But railroading is not necessarily a bad thing. It shouldn't be even considered as a negative. It should only be considered as a negative if you're a GM or DM that is railroading your party that wants a open, free form, sandboxy type campaign. If your players want a sandbox, don't give them a really direct route to the problem.
So one of the comments that was thrown out there quite a bit is, if you railroad correctly, they'll never know it's a railroad. And it's very true. You can pull that off where, the illusion of choice is another thing that gets thrown around. Yeah. I don't know which one we want to kind of do first, but So when you pull it off correctly, that's basically hiding the linear path with a bunch of stuff. You know everyone is going to go to that castle. You know the players need to go to that castle, but you kind of don't make it you make it pretty much all paths lead to that castle. You know.
Yeah.
Well,
I think that the real trick is if you're going to do that, the illusion of choice is if you know you want to get the party to that castle, right? You have to make sure all the paths don't seemingly appear to be leading there on the outside of the, you don't want the players to know that that's where it's headed. So you have to put other things in the way, story-wise, to trick them into thinking that it could go anywhere.
Have you heard of the?
I think it really takes it takes a great GM to understand how to do that properly.
Yeah.
It's not me, but a lot of you out there, I'm sure, who have this down, have a lot to say, and people need to hear how to do this properly. But.
Have you ever heard the quantum ogre? Do you know what that is?
Nope.
Or I also called Schrodinger's ogre before, but quantum ogre is the way I've heard it because the ogre exists in all places at once and no places at all. So your party is going down a path in the woods, and it comes to a fork in the road, and one goes up into like a mountainous clearing and goes that way, and then the other one is going down through like a swampy marsh, but the party doesn't know which path they're going to take. It doesn't matter which path they're going to take. They're going to fight an ogre. If they go up the mountain rocks, there's an ogre there. If they go down the swamp, the same ogre is there. It's the quantum ogre. It's going to happen. The party doesn't know that. You don't have to tell the party that it's going to happen either way. It's just something that happens. That's an illusion of choice. The party gets to pick, but it did not actually matter. They're fighting that ogre. That can sound really harsh. Like, you're just railroading. Like, well, yes, we are railroading. That's what this whole topic is about. You have to railroad to a point, or you can end up with a situation where if you're purely reacting to the players might not know how to proceed. They're going to be grasping at straws like, oh, I don't know what to do. I'm like, we can do whatever you want. Well, they'll just kind of shrug at you.
I've fallen in the pitfalls in the past where you give your party too much leeway, too many options, too many places to go to get you to the final destination. That's a problem. It can't be a certain problem. You don't want to confuse your party, right? Into figuring out what the plot is. Some players want a railroad. Some players want a direct line in the story. They want to be able to knock out certain aspects of the story, and some players don't. But to do it appropriately, like we're talking about railroading efficiently or railroading properly, right? I think you really have to make you have to make an illusion of choice, and how you do that is, in my opinion, you basically have a goal of where the party wants to go, right? And you throw random things that you think might be, like, you might not plan, or let's say you plan for an ogre to attack the party somewhere in the session, and the ogre is ultimately like an underling of the main boss that you're trying to force them to, right? But they don't know that yet. You can certainly steer them in that direction by, ending combat early or something and making that ogre flee in the direction of its master, leading them to that kind of thing, which they might not necessarily, if you could play it off like you didn't expect them to track that ogre down after they made it flee, but little things like that, I think, is the way you do it.
You could put an item on that ogre, like I actually ran a little one shot where one of the goblins that they killed had a note saying, go find the farmers, and drew like a little, really bad map. So then they found this
really bad map. I'm talking a really awesome map, which is actually hanging somewhere up in this room. It's if you're a player, draw more.
Oh, I'm gonna grab it.
Yeah, grab it. Draw more terrible maps for your players. This map made my day because the session ended, basically, and Andrew was like, hey, this is what's going to happen next, or this is what's going to happen tonight, during downtime.
So, okay. Am I gonna reach? So this is the map that they found.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, do that stuff.
Yeah, this is.
I could,
it's a prop. So literally, they're like, okay, I searched the goblet. I pulled this out of my pocket. I'm like,
Yep.
and they're like, what? They unfolded it and like turned it around and the bad goblin grammar and the bad goblin sketches and stuff. It was great.
Yeah.
And so hooking your players is a good way to avoid the whole railroad argument. If you can create a situation where your players really want to go from point A to point B, then it's not really a railroad if they want to do it.
And as a player, you can certainly hook your DM, which is exactly what Andrew did to me. He hands me this map, and it's like, well, okay, that's what's happening. That's what's happening right now.
Yeah.
We're doing that, and you give the players what they want. But yeah, railroading, not a bad thing. Don't think it's a bad thing. Just do it when your players want you to do it, and don't do it if they want a sandbox kind of game.
Sandboxes are tough.
Sandboxes are
I
really
feel like the majority of people that run a sandbox aren't actually running a sandbox. They're just
tough.
throwing
a really good railroad.
Yeah, they're just running a railroad that doesn't have a conductor.
Yeah, the only way to run a sandbox, in my opinion, and this is a whole different video, is give your players not a blank map, give them a map that you made. Just give them a map and make them basically ask questions about it, come up with happenings that's going on, and let them pick which ones they want to do.
So I'm not sure how familiar people watching this are, but there's a term of style game called West Marches, which is very much like that, where, well, in the West Marches cases, the map is incomplete.
Yeah, and the players are creating them.
Yeah, players are filling it in.
basically.
Like, you can't go buy a map of the world, the players have to fill it in.
It's uncharted territory for the players, and they're exploring stuff
Yeah.
that they're very unfamiliar with.
And they choose, okay, well, we know there's ruins over here. Let's go explore the ruins this time. Or there's a temple-looking graveyard thing. Let's go explore that. Or this dark forest. Let's go explore that. So they're picking out the things on the map they want to go show and thing. Or explore. But a lot of times with the West Marches campaign is there may be some sort of overplot, but what it usually kind of boils down to is like Dungeon of the Week, Encounter of the Week. It kind of turns into a grindy thing, which is fine. I actually think that's kind of a fun way to play, just knowing that these are the different kinds of places we can go to and different kinds of monsters. That where the players can choose what they want to do on the map is very much a sandboxy game. So I think sandboxes, you either have to almost over prepare, or you have to be incredibly good at improving. One of the Facebook comments, and I'm not going to try to quote directly here, but they basically said that if you were running a railroad, that you are bad at prepping as a DM, and you're not a good DM. And I was like, what are you talking about?
If you're running a railroad, you're probably over prepping.
Yes,
the game,
you are.
Anything.
Yeah, if you're running a railroad, you're writing yourself stuff set in stone, and you're not giving yourself the improv leeway that can happen as often. You can still improv. I mean, that's just the nature of it.
Yeah.
So like, whenever I've done this episodic adventure stuff for my my players, it's like running an entire one shot every freaking other week. It's like, it's a lot of prep.
It's awesome. I've been a part of it. It's that's a great way to run a railroad. Is the players already show up to the table knowing kind of knowing what's going to happen. You're going to have a problem that needs to be solved that session, right?
Yeah, there's the details.
Yeah.
So when I was running those episodic games, it kind of broke down into a couple steps. Step one is, here's what the problem looks like to you and where the problem is. That's step one. Step two is the players now have to find out the missing pieces of the puzzle, and that becomes the reveal. And then the finale is confronting the problem and solving it. So like one that you did not play in, but I ran, was players had to go to Deadwood, South Dakota, because the problem is there were werewolves in Deadwood, and something was killing them, and it was spilling out into the public, and it was not a good thing. So they get there, they have the problem. They start researching it, and they find out that the problem was there was a Wendigo was getting into a turf war with the werewolves. And they pieced the puzzles together, and they found all the solutions for that. And they figured out where the Wendigo was. And then they had to solve it. And how they solved it was they actually teamed up with the werewolves to take down the Wendigo. So all of that was pre-written. There was no, I mean, if they wanted to, they didn't have to team up with the werewolves, but it was like a list of things they had to get done.
Yeah. Yeah, Wendigo. That's an interesting creature. Wendigo's awesome. Yeah, railroading. It's not bad. It's not a bad thing. Don't criticize it if you haven't tried it, right?
You know, one person was like, I don't like, on Facebook, he was like, I really don't like the term railroading. It's just so negative. And I completely agree. People have turned it into a negative.
A negative thing.
And he said,
just like metagaming.
He said, you don't railroad, you craft an adventure. And I'm like, that's a good way to put it. Railroading is just that gut-wrenching term.
Well, I think players, you know, if we want to get into like players' perceptions of railroading, and like how to treat DMs that are writing this kind of adventure is, it's, you know, if you gotta have to learn, you know, the cues that your DMs or GM is putting out there, and like if you understand that like the story he's giving you has a really clear, obvious endpoint, it's like he wants you to follow some cues here, and you as a player shouldn't squander that opportunity. He's giving you the information. You don't have to hunt for it and dig for it in the game, which...
he wants to get you past this point, so then you can start the adventure.
First and foremost, he just wants to have a good game with everybody.
Yeah.
And you should take those cues and make that fun for him too. The DM's role isn't just to make a fun time for the party and a good adventure, sacrificing his own enjoyment. Like you don't make a DM feel bad about the choices that they made. You help them learn, right? And that's your responsibility as a player. So if you're a player and you don't like a railroad, let your DM know that you don't like that kind of play style, you know, or you might just keep getting it.
Yeah.
And if you do like that kind of play style, and your GM is thinking maybe you guys want a sandbox West Marches style game, and you don't, it's your responsibility to tell the GM. No, we want more of a straightforward campaign. We want to know what we're doing.
So have you ever watched the YouTube channel XP to Level 3?
A few times, yeah. Great channel.
Yeah, I really like the channel.
A lot of funny stuff, yeah.
There was a skit that they did that made fun of railroading. And it was very recent. And it was a really funny skit. Basically, let's go to the bar. I'm like, well, you know, you really should go to meet the king in the castle, and then we don't want to do that. And they kept trying to not go meet the king in the castle and try to go other places. And the DM was just seamlessly railroading them back into that. Or like, let's go to the bathhouse. And like when the king shows up out of the water. And I'm like, God, it was really fun making fun of railroads. But at the same time, if a DM really wants you to take a hook, you should. Don't try to ruin all of the prep that the DM has spent. And saying, no, we're going to go over here. Something I know you don't have written down.
And on the flip side of that coin, as a GM, if you're creating this linear story and you're trying to force your players down this path, and they decide they want to take a different route, a different direction in the story, you know, be accommodating. Go for it. Wing it. It's a perfect time to learn how to improv, you know.
It can be scary improving, though.
It can be scary. So I practice it all the time because I have like a rule, like you prep like the general, the goal of your session, what you want the players to accomplish, and because I'm so used to the players not doing what I want anyway, you just gotta wing it. So the more you do that, the better you get at it. Like you're not gonna learn something.
Yeah.
You're not gonna do something great the first time you do it. You have to do it all the time, and then eventually you have like a built up bunch of ideas that you can just kind of toss in when they're appropriate. But yeah, be open to letting your rails break.
Yeah,
you know?
GMs be open to going off the rails or stopping and letting the players off for a bit. Players, please don't reject every hook that the GM is trying to give you. He has a story that he's prepared. There's both sides to this. So
And hook that GM. Like sometimes, think about it. Like if you're going down the rails in a train, and all of a sudden, like oh, your communications is out or something, and you get down the road in town, and there's another train heading towards your direction, but there's a turnoff kind of switch thing, and it's just like, well, sometimes you gotta just like you're heading for that station, but you know what? We gotta get off. We gotta let that train pass, and then maybe we'll back up, block everyone, make everyone wait a half hour, 45 minutes to get home. Back up, park in front of the path there. Everyone's sitting on their phones in the car, thinking about turning around, taking the long way around.
We're trying to think of. Apparently, we don't know how trains work.
Yeah.
But all I know is usually, when it comes to a train and a car, a train wins. That's pretty much.
Yep. Yeah. And as a player, don't park your car on those tracks.
Yeah.
just not. Sometimes you got to turn around and take a long route, right?
What else about railroading?
Well,
it's not bad. It's not this evil thing that. The problem with railroading is there aren't that many examples shared of really good railroads, because usually the players don't even think about there being railroad. The problem stems from is the really bad railroads. Those end up on the Reddit RPG horrors. Those are the ones that people share around and this is how you don't play D&D.
But it's 100%. I would go on I would say that it's not even the DM's problem, the GM's fault. I mean, it's their fault that they can't create a good story yet. But anybody if you're a GM listening to this, DM listening to this, you understand just how difficult it is to get decent at crafting a story and running a session.
Yeah.
So if you're really if you know your DM is newer, and as a DM you should be transparent about your skill level, right? You should not just try to take your GM down a peg just because they're not good enough to run you a great session. Sometimes they just need to craft a story and and put in those paces,
Yeah.
Now we're griping about players, but just if that's just not the kind of game you want to be, don't just say, okay, that was a terrible session, we're quitting the group because this GM
all he does is railroad.
All he does is railroad. It's why don't you talk to the GM and be like, hey, we know you like to run this kind of campaign, but we really want a little bit more freedom in our game. All it takes is a little bit of talking. It's a few little adjustments, and all of a sudden I've had to make those adjustments myself in the past, and it's been great. All you need to do is communicate. I think communication is 100% of the railroad problem.
Yeah.
Because railroading's only a problem if the players don't want a railroad. If they're not talking, if they mention their concerns to a GM and the GM is still like, you know what? Nope, this is how I run the game. I'm the boss. I'm the GM. It's my adventure. If you're a GM and say it's my adventure, it is. It's your story.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's your story that you're facilitating for players. You're not running the story so the players do exactly what you want. It's not like you crafted a bunch of characters and now you want the players to run your characters.
Yeah. Well, it's tough because being a GM, whether you're new at it or you're an old hat, there's a lot of time involved.
Yeah.
And there are players that are not, in my opinion, good players.
Yeah.
They dick around.
Just like there's bad DMs, there's bad players.
Oh, there's totally bad players. And they're not necessarily the bad players you think of. Because everybody thinks of the rules lawyer bad players or the metagamer or the not technically socially correct. People that are but there's also the players that just want to, what's a good swear word? 4th edition. There are players that just want to 4th edition the game up.
Yep.
They just want to F with the DM.
Yeah, everything the DM says they have to either question or
they
ask.
Oh, we don't want to do that. We want to do this.
Ask questions that put the GM in a compromising position.
Or oh, well, what are we going to get out of it if we help the king?
We got players that will go against the party.
Oh, yeah.
Because they think it's fun. They think it's
It's
funny.
what my character would do. Worst frickin'
It's like-
cop-out ever.
It's a, don't make a character that, well, that's what my player would do to the party that he's with. No, just don't make that kind of character.
Yeah. Reevaluate your character design choices.
You know, we're gonna have to like title this video like railroading plus other stuff.
Other stuff.
Plus other
one thing I
gripes.
really wanted to talk about, and it kind of is relevant to the communications part, is the death of Session Zero.
Yeah.
I think a lot of
it's
problems.
Funny. We all talk about Session Zero. It's like, oh, we need to have a Session Zero.
Yeah.
We need to have a Session Zero.
Everybody brings that up in
Who
campaign.
has a Session Zero?
They don't because
You know,
it's
you know how
social
long
media.
it's been since I've had a Session Zero?
A true Session Zero. So
Session Zero is like the 30 minutes before your first session starts.
and actually, some of our new players and GMs might not even know what a Session Zero is.
Yeah.
Session Zero is it's supposed to be that first session where everybody comes together, usually makes characters at the table. You talk about the campaign, or what the GM talks about what they want to do, what the kind of overview is about, the expectations. Players can bring up like styles of games that they don't like, things they're not uncomfortable, that sort of stuff. But the problem is now because of social media, and this is a weird take on it, but social media, Facebook groups, text chains, all those sorts of things, Discords, everybody has their characters usually ready to rock by the time it is the first session.
Yeah.
Everything's ready to go. The DMs probably send out a little synopsis of the campaign.
Yeah.
So you're hitting that first session, ground running. Session 1, let's go. Start
your,
into
session,
it.
your session 1 might take a week of text messages.
Yeah, that's it.
But, I mean, you're still putting the paces of what a session 1 is
I think you
there to
miss
do.
a lot.
But I think one thing you definitely miss is if you're playing with players that you've never played before and you get together to play together, if you're not playing online and you get together personally, you're then learning how how the players are gonna interact with one another.
Yeah.
And there might be a player that just does not jive well with the rest of the players, and you're not gonna know that through messages and stuff beforehand. You know, you could even get on webcam if you're playing online and just talk, just have a conversation with your players. It could be about anything. It could be how about how their day's going, and then bring up character stuff. But have conversations with your players, and I think that solves a lot of issues. You know?
Yeah. I'm trying to think of the last time I had a real Session Zero. So I run public games sometimes at the local game store, and I think that was the last time was the superhero campaign that I ran. It was an actual Session Zero. But even then, I think half the people had their characters done before we even got there. Which is fine. I mean, but the whole point of Session Zero is to get together, discuss the campaign. There's other cool things you can do with the Session Zero too, like world build on the spot. But God, that's
I like to do a lot of including my players in world building ideas. That's how I like. I've always liked to do that, and that's Session Zero is a perfect time to do that. That's also Session Zero is the time to determine whether or not you want to run a railroad or a random,
And actually, what's funny, the world building aspect, that's a really good way to make a railroad feel less roady, is if your players have a hand in the world building a little bit, like naming towns, naming cities,
and they're more ready to go on that railroad if they've had a hand in crafting the
more
story.
investment.
They've included something that they really want to do. Usually they'll say, well, it's like, well, my character has this background with this person, and it's like, well, you know what, we're going to include that in the story somehow, and then they know it's coming down the pipeline somewhere.
Yeah.
So they don't mind the rails till they get to the part where they want their character to have that interaction.
Yeah, if you could build an entire campaign with a series of railroads, which is solving everyone's background stories one at a time, and I don't think anybody would care, because they're like, you read my background? They would just want to do it. So Joe's background story. Yeah, we're gonna go fight his evil grandfather, and now we're gonna go to Tim's. We're gonna go find his long lost wife, and you go through all of those, and that'd be a really good way to craft a campaign.
So if you have lots to say about railroading, hit us up on Facebook, send us some messages, or comment below, and if you like this episode, please like, share, and subscribe. Hit the little bell icon to be notified when we put other videos up. But until next time.
Yeah, comment what kind of things you want us to talk about too.
Yeah.
And we have lots of ideas, but if we can get personal and talk about specific things or give you advice on certain topics, we definitely want to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So
Until next time.
Bye.
Bye everybody.